Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the hybrid meeting straight from the horse's mouth. We'll get started in a while as everyone's filing in. Great to see you today. We have an excellent panel coming up and they will be answering all your questions on hybrid meetings, everything you wanted to know, and maybe some things you didn't want to know. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We'll start in about a few seconds. Good morning. Great to see everyone starting to say hello on the chat. Feel free if you want to introduce yourself. You can share your LinkedIn profiles. This is going to be an interactive session. We want to make sure everyone gets their questions answered, and so that everyone is in a great place, because hybrid meetings is where it's at. So we're going to get started right now just with some of the housekeeping rules. So please make sure that you are muted muted. We will have questions via the Q&A. We will also check in the chat, but we prefer if you can at least first do it on the Q&A, but we also, if you want to chat amongst yourselves, then you can chat amongst yourselves, and this session is being recorded. So I would like to introduce our panel right now. So first off, let me introduce myself. I'm Gail Goldner, and I am on TAMS. I'm on the Training and Development Committee. And we know that hybrid meetings is a very hot topic right now. So that's why I wanted to bring it to you today. And our first panelist is Shawls Iyer. She is with Nina and Pinta. And we have Jimmy Lee from the IEEE Communication Society. And we have Mark Stevens from iMeet. He's a consultant. Jimmy, to go back to Jimmy, Jimmy is an association planner. And we have Kate O'Malley from Encore on sales. And we have Kyle Arndt, he is with production. So we will get started. So I would like to go around with each of the panelists, and they are going to share with you just very briefly some experience that they have with hybrid meetings. So we are going to start with the southernmost part of the country. So we are going to start with Mark Stevens, who is in Orlando.
Way down south. Thank you, Gail. Thank you. So she asked us to say a little bit about ourselves and then what experience that we had. So I started life as the director of training for Starsight, Lanyon, and later it became Cvent. But then after a while broke away, and I'm a consultant on my own with a company called iMeet and others. So we run into all kinds of companies from Amex, GBT to Cvent. So I'm daily talking with all kinds of event and meeting professionals. We also did what was called the Planner Confidence Survey the first 16 months of the year. So 10,000 planners would respond, and it was used by people like US Travel and BTN to gauge confidence. The reason I brought it up is that you hear from all the different various planner groups what was going on and how they're making progress, especially toward hybrids. I also sit on an advisory board for a hotel ownership company, and they have about 180 hotels in their portfolio. So I hear it from the hotel side as well, how the pandemic has just accelerated this change in meetings. I say we've moved ahead 10 years and 10 months. So there's growing pains. And one of the big ones is hybrid meetings. It used to be a buzzword. Now we actually have to do them. And it's not so easy. And that's why we're here today. So I'm going to talk a little bit when the questions come in from the hotel management perspective, as well as Cvent Connect. And I'll give you 1 minute on Connect. Some of you may have joined that or been at that meeting, a real hybrid. To set the stage, in 2019, they had 4,000 attendees in Las Vegas for the meeting, no virtual side. In 2020, it went virtual and they had 40,000 attendees, a 10x jump. And then in 2021, they went to a true hybrid. So you had about 2,000 on site, 17,000 online. And someone had asked a question, I'll answer it right now. How did they do the pricing? It was $5.99 for a ticket on site. A minimal on-site experience was free. And then they had a $99 full online experience. So they're learning like everyone else is, trying to figure this out as they go along. And they had all kinds of other things they did that I can interject as the questions come in. But that's the standpoint I'm coming from. And now we'll hear from the other.
Thank you, Mark.
members.
So we'll go up the map to Atlanta, Georgia. So Kate O'Malley with Encore. If you could just share a little bit about your hybrid experience.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for having me here today. Really excited to be back with some of these people and see some new faces and be able to have conversations around a topic that's not going away. You know, Mark mentioned it well. It used to be a buzzword, hybrid events. Now it is a part of our daily conversations and plans for the future. It is not going anywhere. So my experience has been with Encore Global. We were formerly PSAV. So we have been based out of hotel venues as well as other venues that have events such as arenas, even out on lawns and conference centers, just different elements like that, where we've come in and we've really helped our clients, whether they be associations, they be organizations that are more socially based even, so fraternities and sororities like that, as well as major corporations, come in and find solutions that will help them reach their attendees. And their attendees could be their internal clients themselves with their own companies, or it might be actual attendees or customers that they have. So getting that message across is really important. And just like Mark, we've had exposure to so many of these different industries and different types of meetings and objectives that they're trying to come to solve for. Have really been able to look at how can we customize solutions for our clients. So we started out with our own platform that we basically took all of last year to make more robust. We had already been doing this for well over a decade with this specific platform. And we really shifted and we threw a lot more of our digital team towards really creating this custom need that we were receiving from our clients. And it really helped us to create something that was able to answer the objectives and the goals that our team members and clients had alike. So from there, we've actually expanded. Encore has now partnered with groups such as CVIT, Attendee Hub, and Intrado, where they offer different types of platform solutions. So we're able to really give options to our clients and customers to really solve for their needs and their solutions. So it's really been a great experience because, again, very similarly to Mark and probably several people on this call, we only know what we know. And in the last year and a half, everyone's knowledge on this has grown so much. And what I really think has been the biggest thing that I have seen come out of hybrid and what our company has really tried to help our customers focus on while they're planning is return on engagement. So much we are focused on meetings having a return on investment. How much is this meeting going to cost me? This is the budget. Why are we meeting? What's the objective? And what's the outcome that we're going to have? But now we need to add on that return on engagement because especially when you have a hybrid element, that virtual side of things, you don't get that face-to-face eye contact that you would in the same room. You aren't hearing people give applause or laughter when you tell a joke. So you're not able to see how they're receiving the content. Well, how are you going to make them engaged in this process so that they're not distracted on their email and other things or watching the news in the background, but they're also able to get the objective from the meeting that they are able to walk away with at that point, the learning, the information, the excitement. And that's really the focus now. And it's twofold. We don't want to forget about the engagement of those that are on site. And that's where that hybrid event really is special because you're still only planning one event, but you've got two different audiences to prepare for. So really focusing on that return on engagement as your starting place. Once you have your objectives, helps you to build what that hybrid element looks like. And that's really where our company comes in and tries to help guide and handhold and support you through it.
Thank you, Kate. So we will go further up to North Carolina where we have Charles, who will tell a little bit about her experience.
Hello, everyone. My journey truly began more as a consumer. I wanted to learn more about hybrid events, and especially I come from the hotel industry and very recently joined Nina and Pinta, a management consulting firm, as well as sit on the board of directors for the North Carolina Business Travel Association. As we all know, due to the pandemic, we could no longer really have in-person events. So then, the thinking started, okay, what can we do and how do we truly educate everybody on how to hybrid? And so therefore partnered up with the New Jersey Business Travel Association and created a program, a two-step program of first part being hybrid is hip. Let's level set. What are the logistics, the criteria? What are some of the things we need to consider to even host what a hybrid is like? Part two is now let's walk the talk. We've been talking about this, we've been learning about this. And so we did a part two called How to Hybrid, where the attendees had an opportunity to truly experience firsthand on what a hybrid event would look like, what the virtual attendees would feel like, what are some of the technology that we could infuse to making it come to life. And we actually had the pleasure of partnering with Encore to be able to deliver. Some of the key learnings that I personally saw, and in preparation, of course, for this event, went through the CEvent digital event strategist training program, read a lot of different periodicals, manuals, and some of the key learnings was truly, number one, definitely have different communication for the virtual attendee as well as the in-person. What are the costs involved? Why is it that there are those costs involved? Did you know you had a whole virtual digital team sitting elsewhere? So overall, I think hybrid is the way to go, and it's going to become a primary way of conducting events. Now that we've seen the ROI, where, as Mark mentioned, you probably had 4,000 in an event, but you have an opportunity to have up to 40,000, but you just got to plan it right. So I'm eager to continue to learn more. Even this morning, did you know to have a Zoom virtual background that you actually need some kind of a software to be downloaded? Hey, that's what I learned this morning. So, there is continuous learning, and I'm excited, especially from ID with IEEE. What are your thoughts? And let's share it with everybody.
Thanks, Charles. Really appreciate it. We'll go north to New York to Jimmy.
All right, representing New York here. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Travel and Meeting Society for inviting me to join this panel to talk about a very relevant and pertinent topic, which is hybrid meeting. Obviously, working for the IEEE Communication Society. Obviously pandemic hit, we pivoted, that's a popular word back then, to virtual, and now as the world can open up a little bit, there's more of a request, especially from our membership, in terms of getting back to meeting in person. But again, depending on what the conference is, it's not always easy to do so. So that's where hybrid comes in. I have had the personal experience to actually work on one last December. The main conference in Taipei, and we had like almost 1,000 people participating virtually. And then I'm actually working on one right now for Madrid. Again, we're expecting maybe 600 people in Madrid, and then the rest will be virtual. And then on a kind of industry side, I'm the president for NYPCMA, and this past April, we partner with MPI, the GNY, Site Northeast, and a couple other industry association collaborating on GMIT. And that's when I had the pleasure to work with the Encore team at the Conrad in New York to produce a hybrid meeting for industry players. So I know it was very well done. And the biggest lesson I learned is that, look, it sounds scary. Hybrid, scary. Oh my God, you got to plan 2 different meetings, a bunch of people, all of that. But, if you really boil it down to, it's just a matter of having a strong game plan, talking to the stakeholder, finding good partner like Encore, like people like Mark and others. It's the same concept as you would planning an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting. Just making sure you know exactly what your audience is looking for, what is the objective, what is the return, as Kate mentioned, and apply that. So it sounds scary, but if you really put pen to paper and write everything out, it's really not that challenging. And that's kind of the key lesson that I've learned last year and also going on this year. But again, thank you for having me on this panel.
Thank you, Jimmy. And last but not least, we are headed to Minnesota. So Kyle will share with us.
Good morning, everybody. Sounds like it's an hour earlier for me, which is great. Happy to be here. My background starts in the rock and roll world. I moved over to corporate about 5 years ago, and I met a couple of crazy dudes that run IDCOM. So it's been a lot of fun. I mean, in the last 5 years, we've done a lot of our events have been hybrid, even before COVID hit, where we was like, we got people in the room who we care about, and we're going to toss it online. But through COVID, we've seen kind of the mix. Like we've done, completely virtual stuff where we are tailoring an experience to someone sitting behind a screen like you all are today. Or we have, a small in-person studio audience where now we're still speaking to a camera, but we got people previewing. Or we have, last October through the heart of COVID, we snuck a 800-person in-person event, which we actually did broadcast live to another 1,000 people down in Arizona. So we had like 2 teams working on that from the technical side, making it all happen. And we crossed some people over to, try to keep the room in the budget to make it all work. So get to do a bunch of stuff here at ICOM. I'm a technical designer, so I get to make sure it all happens behind the scenes. I work with producers to make sure that their visions are actually going to come to life, and then tame them down a little bit and be like, this is how we actually do that. And then on top of that, like IDCOM offers a ton of different stuff. So we're doing technical management. We have a creative function here where we actually do designs, presentation services, theming and branding for events. And then we also have developed our own platform. So like Entrada and some of the people that Kate partners with, we have a product called Second Stage, which is a virtual platform as well. So.
Great, thank you, Kyle. So we're just going to do 1 or 2 quick polls so we know what everyone would like to talk about and who we have in our audience. So the first question. Have you conducted a hybrid meeting for your organization? Okay, it looks like many people have not. So that's great that you're all here. And we'd just like to do another poll to just find out who's in the room. Great. It looks like we have a really great mix of association planners, corporate planners, and suppliers. And last but not least, most importantly, we want to know about your concerns. Okay, so I just want to share the results as far as concerns. Costs we know is a big one, engagement, technology, and time zones. So we will start, since cost is a big issue. I would like start with Kate as far as cost. How best can a planner figure out what the cost will be for a meeting? What can they do when their RFP to get the best bang for their buck?
Yeah, and it's such a great question, and it is the top question that everyone has when they come to start talking about hybrid meetings. We mentioned that it's the same meeting, but you're having to take 2 audiences into consideration and kind of trying to plan for 2 separate feelings and events in a way, one virtually, one in person. And there is additional cost for that. You have your standard in-room equipment. So maybe your typical event doesn't even have a camera set up in there. You're sharing content, you're not sharing people on the stage or looking around the room or anything like that. So when you start looking at a hybrid event, it does get a little scary because you see elements like cameras, operators, extra setup time. Then there's the virtual equipment piece. We're not talking, when we talk about a meeting like today, for example, we all have our laptops in front of us. We're all joining through Zoom. It's very easy to do. But when we talk about a larger room or a larger conference or one where we want to get maybe into more robust engagement and go beyond the standard simple polls that Zoom can do, that's when you need a platform. And there you go. Okay, I've got this whole other additional cost. Oh, and do you have concurrent sessions? Let's talk about that, because just as you need a different breakout room for each of those sessions, you need a different Zoom room or a different host from a webinar standpoint for each of those concurrent sessions as well. I really view it as it's a virtual room, because you can't have the same, 5 meetings in the same virtual room. So these are all add-on costs. And I'm not telling you this to scare you. I want you to be prepared for the fact of where does this extra money and cost come from? And really, it's all of those elements. And each of those virtual rooms have virtual technology that are being run by technicians that are in different locations. We've got several people throughout the world on Encore's team that actually host these meetings and make sure that they are the stage manager, that they're the project manager. They're helping get everyone queued up, ready to go. Right now today we have Sherry, who has kind of been our key, like, okay, everybody, this is what we're going to do, and make sure everybody's ready and muted and on. We do that in a larger standpoint too, and just like Kyle does with their system, and we go through those logistics in the platform and those additional operators. So when it comes to cost, you see all the different elements that go into it and why it is there. But how do you prepare for that, and how do you look at that? And really, where I say to start, we talked about return on investment and return on engagement. So ROI and ROE. Engagement might not have a monetary return to it. And that is the hardest thing for a lot of meeting planners to get across to CEOs, CFOs, procurement, their team members that are trying to, budget and fund this. And that's really where we want to focus on what they do get back from ROE. Do we get team members who are more engaged, who are buying into the company more, who are feeling that they are valued and worth it, even though they're not the ones in person being able to go to a cocktail hour later that night? Things like that how is this impacting those attendees and the attendees on site in a way that might not give us monetary return initially, but less turnover from our team members, higher survey scores within our own company of how they feel engaged and treated. There's a lot of ways that we can look at this, and every company has a different way that they can look and find value in return on engagement. Now, when you are also looking at costs of a hybrid meeting, the actual return on investment piece, right? Let's talk about budget versus what am I going to get back from this from a monetary standpoint. Associations typically have, even associations as large as have as large a membership base as like 5,000 attendee or memberships, they usually only see 1,000 to 2,000 members ever come to their annual meeting. If you're able to open that base up from a virtual side, have that same 1,000 to 2,000 members come to the annual meeting because they want to be there for the week and experience it. But those that either can't travel, maybe they don't have the ability to arrange childcare or whatever might be holding them back, or get off from work because maybe they've got something else going on, they can still join virtually through the hybrid element and be able to get more out of their membership. So again, we're talking about more memberships staying with you. You're not losing them. We're talking about a much larger reach, getting your message across. You're able to get further out. And then we're also looking at how that impacts those that are in person. What we do virtually can change what we do in person. And so where we might have actually spent more money going and doing maybe a large dinner out for the entire, for an entire department or something like that, maybe now there's actually something that we can do that's more virtual. So you're transitioning some of that budget that you put in other areas to the virtual side. Now, right now, especially because we're still in COVID, we're not out of coronavirus outbreak. We're in the next variant. There's a lot of questions around it. And honestly, I will say our industries are still going strong. Hospitality and events is still seeing more events book by far than those that cancel. So where we are seeing a little uptick of that variant and seeing some hesitation, we're still seeing more events. People want to meet both in person and virtually. So with the uptick of the Delta variant, we've seen certain companies, and IEEE last year actually was one of them. So I know Demi's familiar with this, but they've gone on travel bans again. So, you know, several of the large pharmaceutical companies we've worked with have gone back to a travel ban to try to keep their team members safe. And that changes, again, who you can reach and how. So when we're looking at it in the confines of the COVID outbreak and cost, you're going to have less people coming to that in-person meeting. So again, less food and beverage expenditure. That again can go towards these virtual costs. But overall, the one thing that no one should forget is sponsorship, branding and sponsorship. This is where you're going to get your biggest return, is getting others to help pay for it. And they can sponsor entire meetings. And it's as simple as having a Zoom call like we are today and putting a slide up that says this is sponsored by TAMS, or this is sponsored by ICOM or iMeet. We can have even something that simple as a return on someone else giving us funds to be able to purchase these different hybrid elements that we're working from. Even on site, you can have sponsorships for internet. So as you're having to purchase internet for the conference, you can have it so that there's a splash page that comes up and shows again who your sponsor is, or it can go to their website directly when they log in. So there's a lot of different ways you can intricately intertwine sponsorships throughout your hybrid event to take on some of those additional costs that you're not used to. And then finally, going alongside sponsorships, but also reach, is virtual exhibitors. You can again have something as simple as a standard Zoom call. We don't have to go full out on a platform that has a full virtual exhibit hall. We can set up virtual Zoom calls where these exhibitors and people who come in and sponsor and want to chat have time to reach out and speak about their products or about their services and company. And they're going to be able to, again, fund different elements within your hybrid meeting. So really, I encourage you to think out of the box, on three things. What is my cost versus value? What is the actual value of engagement? Because you do want to separate it from those things, because it's that new, it's that important that we're taking that much of a focus. And then thirdly, what is covered or what can be covered by partnering with different companies or sponsors? So really look and think outside of the box of what that looks like. And the last thing I'll leave you with is just an idea of partnering with another company or a sister company or someone else or department, if it's departmentalized within your company. Partner together to host a virtual meeting so that you're both separating and splitting up that extra added cost for the virtual events. So there's a lot of different ways you can really find yourself covering that cost overall.
Thank you, Kate. Those are all really amazing ideas. Really appreciate that. Jimmy, you'd like to follow up with some ideas as well.
Yeah, and yeah, Kate, a lot of stuff you mentioned was stuff that we tried on the conference we had last December. But I think another important piece to this too is when it comes to hybrid meeting, don't think about like taking your traditional in-person meeting and then putting that online as well, because you might have let's say a 5,000 person annual conference with so many breakouts and all of that, and now suddenly you think about how to give all of that to the virtual audience. And again, let's go back to the strategizing and the planning for the conference. You're gonna kind of shift your mindset to think about what is important to the people participating virtually, for example. You don't have to live stream every single session, because then, trust me, you won't have money to do any of that. We got to have a sponsor you get. So I think those are the kind of things that you have to talk again with your board, with your planning committee, organizing committee, to kind of highlight what are the important pieces that you want to live stream to the online audience, and what can be done kind of pre-recorded in advance. So those are kind of things that will greatly help you when it comes to budgeting. But again, the first thing I learned this myself is that don't think about taking your traditional meeting and then putting it online, because then you're just going to drive yourself crazy.
Jimmy, that is a really excellent point. Very much so. So one of the other really big hot topics when it comes to hybrid meetings is engagement. So I would like Shawls to talk a little bit about her experience with the small meeting that she just had and some of the things she did regarding engagement.
Absolutely. I think content and communication are two very critical factors that you have to consider, and understanding who your audience is and kind of curating that to kind of keep that engagement going. Like something so simple. One was the type of keynote speakers that you brought to the stage. And then as we ask questions, as a moderator is asking them questions, each one of them answered a different question. It wasn't, kind of like a repeat, just very similar to Gail, what you did just now, where you just had a couple of folks really address that one question. The minute an audience, is hearing a different voice, it's kind of like they're already, okay, there's something different. So just something very, very simple, and how you plan. And let me tell you, the planning does require a lot of details. It is a lot of back and forth with the venue, with especially your audio visual, because it's an event, it's a production. You have the live streaming aspect of it, you have the virtual, you have what's the technology that's going to be used in the breakout rooms. How can the audience who's virtual engage with who is sitting there in person? And if yes, how does that work? So we use Owl Lab, which was really cute. So as the audience who's in person spoke, the Owl Lab, that little piece of technology moved its head. I said, oh my God, that is so cool. But that is what is very, very critical, to keep the audience engaged. Polling, little prizes, people love winning prizes, and, kind of asking a question just to see, were you paying attention, and say, hey, here's a $25 gift card for you. Something that we could have done better was, say, if we did catering, for example, to send maybe a $25 gift card to those who are virtual. So as we ate, they ate. Something else we could have done is perhaps after, the regular, this is your education, maybe did something fun, like maybe bring in a comedian, or do a cocktail class. Everybody loves those. But, to really engage the audience is how the communication, the delivery of the message, and your entire content from A to Z, I think really two big takeaways.
Thank you, Shawls. So Kyle, can you speak more from the production standpoint of what somebody can do as far as engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start with our clients that are going down the hybrid road, I like to tell them that, like, you really need to decide what the attendees are, what their experience is like first, right? So what sessions do you want to share with them? Jimmy mentioned don't live stream everything because your budget's going to get killed. And he's right in some aspect. The more you do on both places, the more it costs. But so I like to guide our clients, like when they do their agenda, instead of putting their timeline down the side, put it down the center, and then now you're designing two shows, and you're like, okay, this is what the in-person people are seeing, this is what they're seeing online, and then roll through it that way. And that's a good way to start thinking about it. I mean, after that, you're like, okay, so who do I want my presenter talking to, right? Do I have a room full of people, or is the majority of my audience online, right? Do I want my presenter staring at the camera so everyone at home is like they're talking to me? Or do I want my presenter speaking to the room and everyone at home is like, oh, they're talking to a room of people, right? And then on the flip side, it's like, if you got any budget left, Jimmy, you can be like, okay, so now if a presenter's speaking to the room of the people, now you got to be like, okay, well, maybe we should have moments where we have an MC that's just for the virtual audience, right? Now, like that, maybe that camera, maybe it looks like New Year's Eve, and like the camera and that virtual MC is standing on the side of the room, the whole event's going on behind them, and they're speaking directly to that virtual audience, and that, they feel like they're a part of the event. But like on New Year's, when you're sitting watching it at home, you're just like, that looks like fun to be there, but there's a lot of people there, and so you're missing out, but you're not missing it, right? So. And then, I mean, the final aspect of that is the platform. Like, are you expecting people to just be watching one live stream? Do they got places to click? Are they going to different sessions that are tailored to the virtual audience while people are on site walking through rooms? And what does that look like? And there's a bunch of different ways to do it. We have a platform, like I mentioned, Kate mentioned that they've worked with a ton of platforms. I'm sure Jimmy, I'm sure everybody on here has found their fair share of trying to navigate a platform at a virtual event. And it's fun to do, and there's easy ways to do it to get everyone started working through a platform as well.
Great, thank you, Kyle. So one of the questions that came in from our registrants, what tools are available to track sustainability for a hybrid meeting? Does anyone have any experience with that?
Nope, they may not have been invented yet.
So from
gonna make-
Yes, Mark?
I'll take that one. I'll
Okay.
take that one.
Go
So
ahead,
from a
Shaz.
hotel perspective, from a venue perspective, the different brands, we do have the ability to kind of look at sustainability. So for example, Marriott, Hilton, so Hilton has Hilton Light. So depending on number of attendees, you put that in, some of the catering, and then it kind of, and of course, from a hotel standpoint, you got to put in your carbon, your water that you would use during the event, and energy. So it's basically a template that you fill out, and it spits out kind of the footprint at the end that you did this meeting with, say, 100 people, and this is kind of how much it would have been if you did not do sustainable practices, and this is what it is. So it kind of does the savings, if you will. And there are travel management companies, who work with different partners like Thrust Carbon, because this meeting is not just the hotel, right? You've got the airline. What is kind of their footprint that you're looking at? So what is the per attendee savings that you were able to do? And especially when you look at a virtual attendee, that's practically zero, right? That's all of your savings. However, there is the internet, there is electricity. So a lot of those different things that you would take into consideration. The other aspect is catering. Did you use kind of recyclable, disposable? Are you recycling during the event? How much paper are you utilizing during the event? So there are ways and means to be able to calculate that. From an event planner perspective, it's kind of like, I think, and to Mark's point, we're still trying to invent that one main where you could just kind of export all of this data into it, and it'll give you that one golden number. Gail, you're muted.
You're mute again.
I'm just trying to be like all hybrid meetings. It's the t-shirt of the year. You're on mute. Mark, did you have anything else you wanted to share on that?
No, I was going to add a further thought on that. So many of this, we're trying to use tools that were built for on-site meetings, and we're trying to adapt them. But right now, there is a scramble in the technology stack to come up with tools that do things like measure sustainability, that measure engagement more fully, and other pieces. Like Lawrence Colburn over at Twitch is working on Serendipitous, because one of the great things about a face-to-face meeting is bumping into someone in the hallway that you didn't expect to see. And that's where you write more business in the hallways than you do in the classrooms, right? But how do you translate that to a virtual meeting? Some of those things are being taken on by tech entrepreneurs right now.
That's great. Great. I think I know where I need to invest my money. Thank you, Mark. So speaking of tech stack, that was one of the questions. How do you put together the best tech stack if you are new to the virtual and hybrid world? So Kyle or Kate or even Jimmy, maybe any of you have experience with that.
I would say utilize your resources. You're not alone in this. And when you're working with a platform or an audiovisual company, they're there to help hold your hand through this. This might be your first virtual meeting or hybrid meeting. It's not theirs. There might be one person who hasn't been in that yet, but more likely than not, especially when you're working with any groups like Encore, like ICOM, anybody that's out there that's helping support these solutions is going to have the ability to walk you through it. And then just keep in mind too, you can ask why and you can say no. Like, there are so many different options out there. You've probably heard in standard event planning, give me a good, better, and best proposal. That is no different when it comes to a hybrid meeting. There are absolutely specific elements that have to be in place, but there are different ways to do it and different outcomes that can come from it. So always start with your objectives and who you're trying to reach and what the experience they want to have. And again, I loved how Kyle put the agenda in the center and then work off of each side, because we always talk about make sure you're looking at both, but putting that agenda front and center helps keep your goals and keep you on track and make sure that you're following suit with each in-person and virtual attendee. But really rely on them. They're here to help. And that's the whole purpose of our industry. If you want to look at audiovisual and technology partners who are helping you walk through this, that is the whole reason we exist. We are here to help you have a successful event. And so utilize those resources. That's the best way to put together a technology stack, is to work hand in hand.
And Kyle, what new is out there that maybe people aren't familiar with? For example, I know Shaw's had mentioned some type of like roving camera. Like, what other type of technology has happened even in this short period of time that really has helped take hybrid meetings to the next level?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, like, platform companies are just through the roof, and there's a billion of them now, and everyone's trying to grab your business. I'm sure if you have the word event planner in your title somewhere, I'm sure you get emails all the time of, please do your event on our virtual platform. So, I mean, exploring those and figuring out what they do and but again, I mean, as Kate mentioned, you got to start with your goals and then be like, okay, we need this to do this. Like, we want people to join a round table. So the technology has to be able to support that, right? And we want multiple round tables. So now we have to set up rooms, and then, ask those companies to be like, show us a demo of this, because we need to make sure that it's easy to use for our attendees. Because, like, when someone's clicking around the internet, they got about 2 or 3 clicks of confusion, and before they just hit the X out button and they're back to their email. So, I mean, there's just like a lot of research that's going to have to go into it. Like, the platform is really like everybody is trying to jump on the platform game and just, creating different technologies. I bet Kate probably knows hers really well. I know our platform Second Stage really well. And, we've kind of just tailored it to what people need, what people have needed through COVID. We have the devs on staff, and we just make what they want. So it's been fun.
Gail, I can add something to that real quick.
Great.
I'll date myself by saying this is like the days when we first began online registration and ERFPs back in the day. It's a whole new world. And there's many, like Kyle said, there's so many people developing platforms and new things that if you keep your eyes peeled, you'll find the one that fits what you need, as he said. Cvent's a huge platform, but it's like shooting a sparrow with a howitzer for some people that don't need that much. But there's all levels out there, and they're being developed even as we're speaking.
Yeah.
And Gail, if I may just add really quickly, it's great to have tools and technology during your event. I would highly recommend producing like a 60-second or a 2-minute attendee training prior to the event, just so they know what to do, because I think we lose a lot of attendees during the program because they're trying to figure out what to press and what to do. That was my 2 cents
That's
there.
a really great point, Charles. Excellent. So Mark, can you speak?
I just add one more,
Oh, sure,
more
Jim.
last comment to all of that. This is an exciting conversation here. Look, I kind of right. There's like a bazillion platform out there, and you can look at every single one of them, trying to find the right one. You're gonna drive yourself crazy. I know I've gone down that rabbit hole before. So don't overthink it. Okay. There are tools like Zoom and WebEx. There's nothing wrong with those tools at all, But again, it goes back to knowing what is the objective of your conference, and even for like a 100-person little meeting, something like that, you can just set up a Zoom, set up a laptop in the breakout room, and then project it to the virtual audience. That so just don't overthink it. Is what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, like I said, you're gonna go crazy.
Thank you, Jimmy. That's a great insight as well. So, Mark, if you could speak from the hotel point of view, like I said, you saw the numbers. A lot of people have not been, haven't even done a hybrid meeting yet. So they really want to know, what should they be expecting from hotels, from the various different, from, sales to catering, how best to work with them.
Right. And many of the hotels in the group I work with are tackling this right now. Initially, back when the shutdowns first began, they thought they would repurpose meeting rooms into broadcast centers and be able to have people come and do both things at the hotels. But then we got the directives that you can't use all the rooms. You got to space people out. You've got to use bubbles and all kinds of other things that are going on that now impact how they sell their space and what's available. And they were going whole hog. And then all of a sudden, as things quieted down, some of those budgets got pulled back and they said, wait a minute, let's see how this is actually going to work out. And then as things began to start up again in, I'd say June, July, RFPs started flying into hotels and they thought, here we go, we're going to have a lot of business. But then they turned to the suppliers and ordered linens. And the linen company said, sure, we'll fill your order in 3 months. I need paper cups. We don't have any. What about this? What about that? And that supply chain is still starting up. And also with their staffing. I heard a meeting last week where some executives went to a hotel to have their meeting. And he said, boy, it was sort of strange. The general manager was waiting our table. And the busboys were the sales execs. And he asked what happened. He said, we don't have any people. I'm trying to help you to get ready. So the hotels are in flux, just like we are, trying to figure this out. And when do they throw the switch on staffing? When do they push for better supplying? So the rule is you better get way out in front of this because they're not going to have as many rooms to offer as they did before. So getting it way in front is going to be critical to even get space. I had one planner from a high-tech company tell me she had a last-minute request. She wanted to book a hotel room. They were all booked. She went to some of her favorite properties and said, look, I've got a blank check. I will give you whatever you need. Get me rooms. And they said, I'm sorry. I'm booked solid with what I'm allowed to do. And there just are no rooms at the inn. You're going to have to go pretty far out. One last thing is, I don't know if you've heard them talk about compression. So in 2020, back in 2020, we were booking rooms in 2022, figuring that's when things are going to open up. And a lot of properties are booked from 2022 to 2023. But now these other meetings from 2020 and 2021, like Kate said, that weren't canceled, they were pushed down the road, like the can kicked down the road. And they are starting to come into conflict with the ones that were booked earlier. So we're going to have a little bit of who knows what happened. And we thought it was going to happen right after Labor Day, but it looks like that'll be further into Q1 before it does. But when it does, it's going to be every man for himself, get whatever rooms and whatever services you can possibly grab. Does that help?
Yes, very, very much. That compression issue, I know is a big issue, not just in the meetings industry, but also in the events industry, with weddings and things like that. So another concern I know planners have is how do you figure out your registration, right? Because if you're in person, you might think, oh, you get a lot more out of it because you're getting meals, for example, like Shaw said, they didn't send gift cards or what have you. So maybe Jimmy or Shawls, if you want to speak to, how do you deal with the registration fees for hybrid meetings?
I can go. So again, like everybody said, step one, agenda. What is it that we want to accomplish? Step two, what are the tools needed to accomplish everything on that agenda? And the cost per registration is determined. Yes, you have your sponsorships, so what are all your costs? What is, maybe some profit margin if you're an association that you would like to make? What are the anticipated attendees you expect at a minimum to break even, and that's your registration cost. So for example, your in-person, hotel, catering for in-person, virtual, all of the technology, the platforms you would use, plus any F&B that you would like to send, any gifts, any monies for rewards, for prizes, you kind of put it all together. But then from a virtual, the tools that you would truly use for virtual, and that's why if you notice, most often than not, the one break cost is truly the audio visual required to run that virtual event. One is it a one-way where they're just listening, or is it an engagement piece? So that's how you can break up the cost between who's in person and virtual.
And I might even expand on that too, is to kind of think about what is the value proposition that you're offering to your online audience, right? I mean, obviously, everything that Shaw mentioned, the costs, the expenses and all of that, that's very important. But at the same time, think about what are you offering to the online audience, So, I mean, it's easy to just go down a budget and just plug in numbers to make sure that you at least break even. But if that turned out to be like $500 for a virtual audience, then that might not look right. So you got to think about that angle as well. And I think for me, again, working with my committee, working with the board, we just want to make sure that we come to a number where we feel is justifiable for the audience that we're serving, So just think about that as well.
Great, Jimmy. So since we have a few more minutes, I just now asked if anybody else has any other questions that we haven't addressed. I know we, addressed everything from cost, production, engagement. So really want to find out in our last few minutes if there are any other questions that the audience has. And while we're waiting for questions, I'd like to.
Gail, you I think clicked on muted.
Did it again. Just amazing at that. I just like to keep you guys on your toes. So
there you go.
So I'd also just, while we're waiting for any more questions, if the panel, what would you say is the most important thing that you would tell a planner when they are planning hybrid meeting? What's the number one thing when they're planning a hybrid meeting?
I'll go first. I think everyone has said it. And coming from, I used to work in hotels. I was a meeting planner before coming to Encore as well with an association. And nothing has changed with why we are here. We are all here for meetings and events. And it's because there is a message to get across, whether it be education, information, or excitement. There is something to get across. So always think of what your ultimate reason for having that meeting is, and think of how it's going to be received. You cannot get away from that. I would say set up reminders for yourself to go back in your planning process and say, am I helping achieve my goals? And are my attendees, whether they're virtual or in person, getting that across? Am I getting that across to them? Are they leaving with what I need them to leave with? So even though that's not anything from how I plan my technology specifically point, it is because how you are interacting with that technology or with that venue is going to impact how well your content is received. So just make sure you're setting up reminders for yourself to say, am I staying in line with the whole objective of this?
Those are all really excellent points. Charles?
And I was just going to say, I think something we all struggle with is really quantifying and measuring anything that is intangible. So when you talk about return on engagement, it is the sense of belonging. It is like Mark said, I know how much business I've booked at the bar, but like, how do you do that in a virtual
she froze.
Kind of a setup? How do you create opportunities to truly network and for peer-to-peer, peer-to-peer interaction, right? And, the Zoom rooms, the opportunities. And I think from a planner perspective is to really take that into consideration, to have that solid plan as they kind of roll up their vision up to the CFO and the CEOs who really give you the money to plan this.
Some great points as well. Mark, Kyle, and Jimmy, you have anything else you'd like to share as far as what you feel is the number one thing a planner should know?
Yeah, I can go.
Sure.
I mean, when COVID first hit, I think I was on the phone for 8 hours a day, just talking to our clients and potential clients just about how to actually do a virtual event now that we could be in front of people. And my biggest suggestions is if you don't know, just start asking. There's plenty of people that'll help you. All of us will help anybody achieve what they're trying to do. And we got ideas. We have ways to do it. Our company specifically specializes in showing people what it's actually going to look like and mimicking the experience for any side, for any type of attendee. So ask those questions and really get familiar with like what you can do, and then what somebody's going to feel at the end of the day, which is how you're going to make an impact.
Excellent advice. Mark.
I would add too, don't be afraid. We're all in the same boat. Even those of us here, we're all still making this up as we go, but it's a really exciting time in the meetings business. Rather than meetings closing down, we are exploding into this whole new realm. So dip your toe in, get started. Is it going to be bad? Oh, absolutely. Our early meetings are horrible, but we're going to learn as we go. And so don't be afraid to get started. And as Kyle and Kate said, check with the experts and they'll guide you as we go along.
Okay, so we'll have Jimmy, since he's
He is the
planner
planner.
extraordinaire. What would you like to share?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything that the panelists have said. And again, it's scary. Okay, I will fully admit that. But I also see this as an opportunity, right? Actually, being in a hybrid scenario and having all of these tools that are out there, it's also an opportunity to maybe do something out of the box a little bit. I think somebody mentioned that earlier, so this one you can, play into some of that creativity that you can try to have been thinking to implement for your in-person. You can do more of these kind of thing in a virtual environment, so see this as an opportunity to try something new, try something different, to, again, create that engagement for your audience. But like I said, there's a ton of resources out there. Talk to people like Kate and Mark and Kyle and others. There's so many, we're on a sample, right? Someone mentioned that. So, but yeah, just have fun, right?
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the panelists, and thank you. There's a question just in time. Any top audience engagement ideas? We will, if you can give a 20-second, who has a top engagement idea?
It's cliche, but I love a good scavenger hunt. Personal opinion, a lot of people are over scavenger hunts right now, but I love them.
Great.
For in-person and virtual.
Excellent. So, and also we'd like to keep this conversation going. So please feel free, if you are not already following TAMS on LinkedIn, please follow TAMS and keep this conversation going and share your ideas. As Kyle mentioned and all the rest, we're all here to help each other. So you can link in with anybody on this panel and feel free in the future to, and also you really want to get involved, join a committee on TAMS, get involved, and that way you can really meet the people in the industry and get your answers even quicker. So I want to thank our panel again, and this meeting will be, it's been recorded and it will be on the TAMS website, so you can look out for it there eventually. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Gail and Sherry.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a fabulous day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Make sure there's nothing else here. Okay.